This week, we will discuss internal alignment and how it affects employees, managers, and employers. Internal alignment refers to the pay relationships among jobs, skills, competencies within a single organization. Employees judge a structure to be equitable by comparing each job's pay with the qualifications required, the work performed, and the value of that work. Acceptance by employees of the pay differentials among jobs is a key test of an equitable pay structure. Such structures are part of the network of rewards offered by organizations. The potential consequences of internal pay structures are vital to organizations and individuals. The goals of the entire compensation system should guide the design and management of internal pay structures. There is widespread experience and increasing research to support the belief that differences in internal pay structures, particularly employee career paths, influence people's attitudes and work behaviors and ultimately the success of organizations. This week, we're going to look at compensation strategy, structures that vary among organizations, what shapes internal structures, strategic choices in designing internal structures, guidance from the evidence, and consequences of structures. Internal alignment is often called internal equity. It refers to the pay relationships among different jobs, skills, and competencies within a single organization. Pay structure refers to the array of pay rates for different work or skills within a single organization. The number of levels, the differentials in pay between the levels, and the criteria used to determine those differences describe the structure. Internal alignment supports organization strategies' needs to support important aspects that go into maintaining its competitive advantage. It also supports workflow. Now, workflow refers to the process by which goods and services are delivered to the customer. The pay structure ought to support the efficient flow of the work and the design of the organization. The text explains this concept by using examples of Merrill Lynch. It also motivates behavior. Internal pay structures are part of the network of returns. Pay increases for promotions, more challenging work, and greater responsibility as employees move up in the structure. The challenge is to design pay structures that will engage employees to help achieve organization objectives. The structure ought to make clear the relationship between each job and the organization's objectives. This is an example of line of sight. Employees should be able to see links between their work, the work of others, and the organization's objectives. An internal pay structure is defined by the number of levels of work, the pay differentials between the levels, and the criteria used to determine the levels and differentials. Pay structures are shaped by both external and organization factors, including economic, social, and organization-specific factors. One feature of any pay structure is its hierarchy nature, the number of levels and reporting relationships. Some are more hierarchical, with multiple levels, others are compressed with fewer levels. The pay differences among levels are referred to as differentials. If we assume that an organization has a compensation budget of a set amount to distribute among its employees, there are a number of ways it can do so. It can divide the budget by the number of employees to give everyone the same amount, but in most organizations, pay varies among employees. Work that requires more knowledge or skills is performed under unpleasant working conditions or adds more value is usually paid more. One intention of differentials is to motivate people to strive for promotion to a higher paying level. The most common basis for determining internal structures include content. Now, content refers to the work performed in a job and how it gets done, such as tasks, behaviors, knowledge, etc. A structure based on content typically ranks jobs based on skills required, complexity of tasks, problem solving, and/or responsibility. Next, we have values. Now, this refers to the worth of the work. A structure based on the value of the work focuses on the relative contribution of the skills, tasks, and responsibilities of a job to the organization's goals. While the resulting structures may be the same, there are important differences. In addition to relative contribution, external market value may also be included. For example, what companies pay for this job. Or it may include rates agreed upon through collective bargaining or legislative rates, such as minimum wage. Use value reflects the value of goods or services an employee produces in a job. Similar job content in two different companies may be valued differently based on how it contributes to organization objectives. Exchange value is whatever wage the employer and employee agree on for a job. The same work content in the same company may have different exchange values based on different geographies. The difference between exchange value and use value also surfaces when one firm acquires another. As we've discussed in the last 2 weeks, there are two types of structures. We have a job-based structure and we have a person-based structure. As a reminder, a job-based structure relies on the work content, tasks, behaviors, and responsibilities, while a person-based structure shifts the focus to the employee, the skills, knowledge, or competencies the employee possesses, whether or not they are used in the employee's particular job. In the real workplace, it is often hard to describe a job without referencing the job holder's knowledge and skills. It is also hard to define a person's job-related knowledge or competencies without referring to the work content. So rather than a job or person-based structure, reality includes both job and person. Here in Exhibit 3.4, you can see the major factors that shape the internal structures as external and organization factors, even though they connect and interact. Adam Smith was an early advocate of letting economic market forces influence pay structures. He was the first to ascribe both an exchange value and a use value to human resources. Karl Marx said that employees unfairly pocketed the surplus value created by the difference between use and exchange value. He urged workers to overthrow capitalistic systems to become individual owners and reap the full use of their labor. A countering theory put forth in the last half of the 19th century, marginal productivity, says that employers do pay use value. Unless an employee can produce a value equal to the value received in wages, it will not be worthwhile to hire that worker. One job is paid more or less than another job because of differences in relative productivity of the job and or differences in how a consumer values the output. In addition to supply and demand for labor, supply and demand for products and services also affect internal pay structures. Turbulent changes, either in competitors' products and services or in customers' tastes, force organizations to redesign workflow and force employees to continuously learn new skills. Unpredictable external conditions require both structures that support organizations and flexible employees. Government policies, laws, and regulations also shape the internal structures. In the U.S., equal employment legislation forbids pay systems that discriminate on the basis of gender, race, religion, or national origin. The Equal Pay Act and the Civil Rights Act require equal pay for equal work, with work considering equal if it requires equal skill, equal effort, and equal responsibility, and is performed under equal working conditions. An internal structure may contain any number of levels with differentials of any size, as long as the criteria for setting them are not gender, race, religion, or national origin. Much pay-related legislation attempts to regulate economic forces to achieve social welfare objectives. The most obvious place to affect an internal structure is at the minimums and maximums. But legislation also aims at differentials. A contemporary U.S. example is the living wage. A number of U.S. cities require minimum hourly wage rates well above what federal law requires. The anticipated outcome of such legislation is a flatter, more compressed structure of wage rates in this society. External stakeholders also shape internal structures. Unions, stockholders, and political groups have a stake in how internal pay structures are determined. Most unions seek smaller pay differences among jobs and seniority-based promotions as a way to promote among members. One specific comparison often used in the ratio of CEO pay to that of the average or entry-level worker. Now, let's not forget cultures and customs. They also can shape our internal structures. Culture is defined as the mental programming for processing information that people share in common. Shared mindsets may judge what size pay differential is fair. Historians note that in the 14th century Western Europe, the Christian church endorsed a just wage doctrine, which supported the existing class structure. Market forces such as skills shortages were explicitly denied as appropriate determinants of pay structures. Even today, cultural factors play a role in shaping pay structures. Many traditional Japanese employers place heavy emphasis on experience in their internal pay structures. But pressures from global competitors, plus an aging workforce, have made age-based pay structures very expensive. Consequently, some Japanese employers are shifting older employers to lower paying business units, emphasizing performance and downplaying seniority. And of course, organization strategy will play a role. The belief is that the pay structures that are not aligned with organization strategy may become obstacles to the organization's success. However, aligned structures today may become an obstacle tomorrow. So aligned yet adaptable may be required. And let's not forget our human capital. Now, this includes the education, experience, knowledge, abilities, and skills required to perform the job. And it is a major influence on internal structures. The greater the value added by the skills and experience, the more pay those skills will command. Organization work design also plays a role. Technology used in producing goods and services influences the organizational design, the work to be performed, and the skills and knowledge required to perform the work. The design of organizations is undergoing profound changes. A lot of people who work in organizations are not employees of these organizations. They might either be a supplier or a temporary work supplier, or they may be working under a temporary contract for a limited amount of time on a limited project. These employees may be supplied by outsourcing specialists. Pay for these employees is based on the internal structure of their home employer rather than of the workplace at which they are currently located. Another major work design change is delayering. Entire levels of work have disappeared. Delayering can cut unnecessary, non-contributing work. It can also add work to other jobs, enlarging them. Through the use of self-managed work teams in production work, entire levels of supervisor jobs are removed, and the responsibility for more decisions is delegated to the teams. The organization's other human resources policies also will influence the internal pay structures. Most organizations tie money to promotions to induce employees to apply for higher level positions. If an organization has more levels, it can offer more promotions, but there may be smaller pay differences between levels. The belief is that the frequent promotions, even without significant pay increases, offer a sense of career progress to the employees. Internal labor markets refer to rules and procedures that determine the pay for the different jobs within an organization. It also allocates employees among the different jobs. Employees judge the fairness of their pay through comparisons with the compensation paid to others for work related in some fashion to their own. Accordingly, An important factor influencing the internal pay structure is its acceptability to the employees involved. Employees make multiple pay comparisons to assess the fairness of an internal pay structure. Two sources of fairness are important. Procedural justice, the procedures for determining the pay structure. It refers to the process by which a decision is reached. For example, the right to an attorney, the right to the impartial judge, etc. Researchers report that employees' perceptions of procedural fairness significantly influence their acceptance of the results. Employees and managers are now willing to accept low pay if they believe that the way this result was obtained was fair. The research also suggests that pay procedures are more likely to be perceived as fair if they are consistently applied to all employees, if employees participated in the process, if appeals procedures are included, and if the data used are accurate. Applied to internal structures, procedural justice addresses how design and administration decisions are made and whether procedures are applied in a consistent manner. Disruptive justice is the result of the procedure, for example, the pay structure itself. It refers to the fairness of the decision, for example, guilty or not guilty. It addresses whether the actual pay differentials among employees are acceptable. Applied to internal structures, disruptive justice addresses whether the actual pay differences among employees are acceptable. Pay structures change in response to external factors such as skill shortages. Pay structures established for organizational and economic reasons at an earlier time may be maintained by cultural or political reasons. It may take another economic jolt to overcome the resistance. A low-cost, customer-focused business strategy may be supported by a closely tailored structure. Jobs are well-defined with detailed tasks or steps to follow. Their pay structures are too. A business strategy that requires constant product innovation and short product design to market cycle times many be supported by a loosely coupled structure. Such businesses may have a turbulent and unpredictable competitive environment. No steps at all are laid out. Employees may work at several teams developing several products at the same time. The pay structure is more loosely linked to the organization in order to provide flexibility. Aggregation structures have fewer levels and smaller differentials between adjacent levels and between the highest and lowest paid workers. They can be categorized as delayed or compressed. Several levels of work are removed so that all employees at all levels become responsible for a broader range of tasks, but also have greater freedom to determine how best to accomplish what is expected of them. This structure sends the message that all employees are valued equally. The assumption is that more equal treatment will improve employee satisfaction, support cooperation, and therefore affect employees' performance. Features of a hierarchical pay structure include multiple levels, detailed descriptions of work done at each level, and outline who is responsible for what. Hierarchical structures send out the message that organization values the differences in work content, individual skills, and contributions to the organization. The choice between the two structures is rarely either or. Rather, the differences are a matter of degree. Levels can range from many to few, differentials can be large or small, and the criteria can be based on the job, the person, or some combination of the two. Exhibit 3.6 from your text also illustrates the differences between these two pay structures. Let's chat a little bit about equity theory. This theory suggests that employees judge the equity or fairness of their pay by making multiple comparisons. By comparing to jobs similar to their own, this might be considered internal equity. Comparing the jobs to others at the same employer, also internal equity. Or comparing their jobs' pay against external pay level, that would be external equity. Surveys done on the degree to which employees make internal and external equity suggest that among the organizations surveyed, about 1/4 to 1/3 of the organizations report that employees raise their comparisons frequently or constantly. A job as a compensation professional requires not only designing a compensation system, but also being able to explain to employees on a regular and ongoing basis the rationale for the compensation system choices. The results from these comparisons depend in part on the accuracy of employee knowledge of other employees' jobs, internal structures, and external pay levels. It is important to be clear that the terms equity and equal are not interchangeable. According to the tournament theory, all players will play better in their first tournament, where the prize differentials are larger. Applying this to the organization structures, the greater the differential between an employee's salary and his or her boss's salary, the harder the employee will work. Within limits, the bigger the prize for getting to the next level of the structure, the greater the motivational impact the structure will have. Several studies support the tournament theory. One reported that giving larger raises with a promotion increases effort and reduces absenteeism. Others found that performance improves with larger differentials at the top levels of the structure. The winner-take-all idea springs from these studies. Virtually all of the research supports hierarchical structures, and tournament theory is on situations with individual performance matters, or where the demand for cooperation among a small group of individuals is relatively low. Sometimes internal pay structures are adopted because they have been called a best practice. Organizations simply copy or imitate others. Recent examples of such benchmarking behavior include the rush to outsource jobs, to emphasize teams, to de-emphasize individual contributions, and to shift to a competency-based pay system, often with little regard to its employees and add value. Institutional theory sees firms as responding and conforming to normative pressures in their environment so as to gain legitimacy and to reduce risk. As such, institutional theory predicts that very few firms are first movers. Instead, they copy innovative practices after innovators have learned how to make their practices work. Exhibit 3.9 summarizes the effects attributed to internally aligned structures. The impact of internal structures depends on the context in which they operate. More hierarchical structures are related to greater performance when the workflow depends on individual contributors. High performers quit less under more hierarchical systems when pay is based on performance rather than seniority, and when people have knowledge of the structure. More hierarchical structures, on the other hand, more elite structures are related to greater performance when close collaboration and sharing of knowledge are required. The impact of an internal structure on organization performance is affected by the other dimensions of the pay model, pay levels, employee performance, and employee knowledge of the pay structure. Lastly, let's discuss the consequences of structures. First, efficiency. An aligned structure can lead to better organization performance. If the structure does not motivate employees to help achieve the organization's objectives, then it is a candidate for redesign. Internal pay structures imply future returns. The size of the differentials between entry level in the structure and the highest level can encourage employees to remain with the organization, increase their experience and training, cooperate with coworkers, and seek greater responsibility. The number of levels and titles in a career path may be rewarded beyond the pay attached to the titles. Next, you have fairness. Writers have long agreed that departures from an unacceptable wage structure will occasion turnover, grievances, and diminished motivation. But that is where the agreement ends. One group argues that if fair differentials among jobs are not paid, individuals may harbor ill will toward the employer, resist change employment, become depressed, and lack that zest and enthusiasm which makes for high efficiency and personal satisfaction in work. Others, including labor unions, argue for only small differentials within pay levels and for similar work, in the belief that this structure supports cooperation and commitment and improved performance. As with all rules, there are exceptions. For example, in U.S. professional sports like baseball and hockey, players are unionized, yet the players' unions do not strive for this type of pay. And lastly, compliance. As with any pay decision, internal pay structures must comply with the regulations of the countries in which the organization operates. While the research on internal alignment is very informative, there is still a lot we do not know. For instance, what about the appropriate number of levels, the size of the differentials, and the criteria for advancing employees through a structure? It is believed that the answers lie in understanding the factors discussed earlier: the organization's strategic intent, its design and workflow, human capital, and the external conditions and regulations. It is also believed that aligning the pay structure to fit the organization's conditions is more likely to lead to competitive advantage for the organization and a sense of fair treatment for employees.